The attack came without warning. Marcus was aboard the Velith flagship when the alarms began screaming. And through the massive view screen, he saw something that made his heart stop, a fleet of warships emerging from hyperspace. So many that they blotted out the stars themselves. The Preservation Alliance had decided not to wait for permission. They are heading directly for Earth, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with fear. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Princess Alendra stood beside Marcus, her face pale but determined. How many ships? She demanded. Over 3,000 Kovathi dreadnoughts, silicate carriers, Mindweaver command vessels. This is the largest combined fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Against them, the Velith loyalists had perhaps 200 ships. And Earth's own defenses were laughable by comparison. Handful of orbital platforms and a fleet of vessels that most species would not even classify as warships. It was hopeless. Everyone knew it was hopeless, but Marcus remembered his own words in the Concord chamber, and he refused to accept that this was the end. We need to warn Earth, he said. They need to know what is coming. What difference will it make? One of the Velith officers asked, and there was no malice in his voice, only despair. Your people cannot possibly prepare a defense in 6 hours. Marcus looked at the officer with something burning in his eyes. You do not know my people. The message was sent, and Earth received it with the same shock that Marcus had felt when he first saw the approaching fleet, but then something remarkable happened within minutes of receiving the warning. Humanity began to move every government on the planet set aside their differences and began working together with a coordination that stunned the Velith observers' factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to military production without hesitation. Scientists who had spent their careers in peaceful research immediately turned their brilliance toward weapons development. Ordinary citizens volunteered by the millions, ready to do whatever was necessary to defend their home. This is impossible, Alendra whispered, watching the reports come in from Earth. No species can mobilize this quickly. It takes months, years, to shift an entire civilization to a war footing. Marcus shook his head. Other species have never faced what we have faced. Every generation of humans has lived with the knowledge that everything could end at any moment. We have been practicing for this our entire existence as a species. The battle began at the edge of the solar system. The Velith fleet engaged the enemy first, buying time with their lives. And Marcus watched in horror as ship after ship was destroyed by the overwhelming force of the Preservation Alliance. But the Velith did not break. They fought with a ferocity born from faith in the prophecy, faith in humanity, faith that their sacrifice would mean something, and behind them, humanity prepared its own surprise. The Alliance fleet expected to find a primitive species cowering on a single planet, easy prey for their advanced weapons. What they found instead was chaos human ships that should have been no match for Alliance. Technology darted through the battle like angry insects, using tactics that no one had ever seen before. They did not fight in formation. They fought as individuals, each captain making split-second decisions that seemed random until suddenly they were Noda Karvathi. Dreadnought found its shields overwhelmed by a coordinated attack from 12 different directions. None of the attackers communicating with each other in any way. The Alliance could detect a silicate carrier was disabled when human engineers jury-rigged a weapon from components they had never seen before, having captured a single piece of Alliance technology. Just hours earlier, a Mindweaver command vessel tried to reach into the minds of human commanders to predict their actions and found only screaming statica, 1,000 different thoughts and impulses and contradictions that no psychic could untangle. Fractured nature of humanity, the very thing that had overwhelmed Alendra when she looked at Marcus, became their greatest weapon. Where Other species followed doctrine. Humans improvised where other species calculated acceptable losses. Humans fought for every inch with irrational determination, where other species saw a losing battle. Humans saw a challenge. Marcus had returned to Earth to help coordinate the defense, and he stood in a command center watching his people do the impossible. They were still outmatched, still outgunned, still facing odds that should have been insurmountable, but they were not. Losing, the land's commanders could not understand what they were seeing. Their simulations had predicted a swift victory, but hours into the battle, they had taken more casualties than they had inflicted, and their formations were in chaos. Fall back, the Kovathi fleet commander ordered. Something no Kovathi had said in 10,000 years. We need to regroup. The Preservation Alliance retreated not, defeated not, destroyed, but stopped, and as the human fleet regrouped and the Velith survivors joined them in orbit around Earth, Marcus allowed himself to feel something he had not felt since this nightmare. Began hope. The following days were a blur of negotiations and recriminations and shifts in galactic politics that would have taken decades under normal circumstances, but now happened in hours. The Preservation Alliance did not disband, but its members were no longer unified. The Kovathi had lost face in the battle and withdrew their support. The Mind Weavers were traumatized by their encounter with human minds, and the Silicate Collective was already calculating that alliance with humanity might be more profitable than conflict. One by one, species that had been ready to destroy Earth began reaching out with diplomatic overtures. Instead, humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic history. They were a force, not the most powerful, not the most advanced, but something perhaps more valuable. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and utterly unwilling to accept defeat. Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the reconstruction efforts. When Alindra found him, she looked at him again with her soul sight, and he saw her eyes widen just as they had at that first reception. You still burn like a supernova, she said softly. Does it still frighten you? Alindra shook her head slowly, and a smile crossed her silver-blue features. No, now I understand what I am seeing. It is not chaos, Marcus, it is potential, infinite, beautiful potential. She stood beside him, looking out at the stars. The galaxy will never be the same now that your kind walks among us. Is that a good thing? Marcus asked. Alindra considered the question for a long moment. I believe so. The darkness the prophecy speaks of is still coming, whatever form it takes. But now the galaxy has something it did not have before. What is that? Alindra turned to face him fully. Hope, stubborn, irrational. Human hope. The kind that looks at impossible odds and says not today. The kind that refuses to accept that anything is truly hopeless. Marcus thought about everything his species had survived. The ice ages and the plagues and the wars and the disasters. And he thought about everything they would face in the future, whatever was coming. Humanity would meet it the same way they had always met every challenge, by getting back up, by adapting, by refusing to break. We are not heroes, he said quietly. We are just survivors. Alindra took his hand and squeezed it gently. Sometimes, Marcus, that is exactly what the universe needs. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, something ancient stirred, something that had destroyed civilizations beyond counting, something that the prophecies had warned about for 100,000 years. It was coming, but for the first time in galactic history, it would find someone waiting for it, someone who had been preparing for extinction since the very beginning. Humanity was ready. The galaxy fractured faster than anyone had predicted. Within weeks of the secret meeting on the hidden moon, word of the Velith prophecy had spread across every corner of known space, and the reaction was exactly as Princess Alindra had warned. Some species celebrated while others prepared for war. Marcus watched the chaos unfold from the bridge of a Velith diplomatic cruiser that Alindra had provided for his protection. and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him with every passing hour. 3 more empires have joined the coalition, Elindra reported, her violet eyes scanning the intelligence reports that scrolled across her display. They are calling themselves the Preservation Alliance. Their stated goal is to ensure galactic stability by eliminating potential threats. And by potential threats, they mean humans, Marcus said. Grimly, Elindra nodded. They are afraid, Marcus. The prophecy speaks of beings who will reshape the galaxy. And to those who benefit from the current order, that sounds like destruction rather than salvation. The Preservation Alliance was growing stronger every day. The Corvathi hegemony had pledged their war fleets, a civilization of warriors who had never lost a major conflict in 10,000 years. The Silicate Collective had offered their manufacturing capabilities, machines that could produce weapons faster than any organic species can imagine. The Mindweavers had contributed their psychic abilities, beings who could coordinate entire armadas with the power of thought alone. Against this coalition stood Earth, a single planet with primitive technology and a population that did not even know the danger they faced. And standing beside Earth was the Velith Imperium, or at least the part of it that Princess Elindra controlled. My father refuses to act, Elindra had told Marcus, her voice heavy with disappointment. He believes that neutrality will protect our empire. He does not understand that there is no neutrality when the galaxy is choosing sides. So Elindra had defied her father. She had taken a portion of the Velith fleet, those commanders who believed in the prophecy, and who had sworn loyalty to her personally, and she had declared her intention to protect humanity from the coming storm. It was not enough. Marcus knew it was not enough, but it was something. And sometimes something was all you had. The Galactic Concord called an emergency session to debate the question of Earth, and Marcus was invited to speak on behalf of his species, a species that most of the delegates still considered too young and too primitive to be taken seriously. He stood before the assembly in a chamber designed to humble those who entered it, a vast space filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds, all of them watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt to outright hatred. You should not be afraid, Elindra had told him before he entered. You have the truth on your side. But standing there, facing beings who had traveled between stars while humans were still learning to make fire, Marcus felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Then he remembered what he had learned. He remembered the fractured chorus of his own soul, the accumulated strength of billions of years of survival, the fire of everyone who had fought and died so that he could stand here in this moment. And he began to speak. I know what you see when you look at me, he said, and his voice carried across the chamber with surprising strength. You see a young species from a broken world. You see primitives who have barely taken their first steps into space. You see beings so insignificant that you did not even notice us until a few years ago. He paused, letting his words settle. And you were right. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. We are young, so young that our entire recorded history would fit into a single footnote in your archives. We are primitive. Our ships are slow, and our weapons are crude, and our understanding of the universe is laughably incomplete. Marcus took a breath. But there is something you do not understand about us, something that you cannot see unless you have the gift that Princess Elindra possesses, and that something is this. Our planet has tried to kill us over and over again. The chamber grew silent. Ice ages that lasted for millennia, asteroids that turned the sky to fire, plagues that wiped out half our population, predators with teeth the size of your hand, and through all of it, through every catastrophe that should have ended us, we survived. He let his gaze sweep across the assembly, not because we are special, not because we are chosen, but because we do not know how to stay down. His voice grew stronger. You want to know what humans are? We are the species that looked extinction in the eye and said not today. We are the species that buried our dead and then planted crops in the same soil. We are the species that watched our children die of diseases we could not understand and then spent generations learning how to cure them. Marcus stepped forward. You think that makes us dangerous? You are absolutely right. We are dangerous, but not to you. He pointed toward the ceiling, toward the stars beyond. Out there, somewhere, there is a darkness coming, a darkness so terrible that your ancestors wrote prophecies about it thousands of years ago. A darkness that scares you so much that you would rather destroy a young species than face what might be on the horizon. His voice dropped, but somehow it carried even further. We are dangerous to that darkness. We are the species that has been training for extinction since before we could walk upright. Every disaster, every plague, every moment of suffering that our ancestors endured made us stronger, faster, more adaptable. Marcus turned slowly, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. You can try to wipe us out. Others have tried. The universe itself has tried, and we are still here. We will still be here long after you have forgotten why you were ever afraid. He straightened his shoulders. So go ahead, vote to destroy us, send your fleets to burn our planet. But know this, whatever comes for the galaxy, whatever darkness your prophecies warn about, you will face it without the only species that has been preparing for it since the beginning of time. Marcus turned and walked toward the exit. We are humans and we do not break. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in 100 different languages, and Marcus could not tell if he had made things better or worse, but he knew that he had said what needed to be said. Alindra met him outside the chamber with an expression he could not quite read. That was either the bravest thing I have ever witnessed, she said, or the most foolish. Can it be both? Marcus asked. Before Alindra could answer, a Velith officer rushed toward them with urgency in his eyes. Princess. The vote, the coalition's proposal to authorize military action against Earth, failed. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. It failed? By 12 votes. The officer said. Enough species were moved by the humans' words to abstain rather than support the action. Alindra grabbed Marcus's arm. You did it. You bought humanity time. But the relief in her voice was tempered by caution, and Marcus understood why the vote had failed, but only barely, and as they would soon discover, the Preservation Alliance had no intention of accepting that outcome. They were already planning something else, something that would not require the Concord's approval. War was coming, and humanity would have to face it whether they were ready or not. The hidden moon had no name on any official map. Marcus had traveled for 3 days to reach it, using a small shuttle that Dr. Tanaka had helped him acquire without leaving any records. And now he stood on a barren surface, beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. The coordinates led him to an ancient structure carved directly into the Varas rock, a doorway marked with symbols so old that they predated every civilization he had ever heard of. He stepped inside and found himself in a chamber lit by soft blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The archivists were waiting. For him, they were strange beings, tall and thin, with bodies that seemed to be made of living shadow and faces that held no features except for eyes that glowed like distant galaxies. Marcus Cole of Earth. One of them spoke, and its voice was like wind through empty corridors. We have waited a very long time for your kind. Marcus wanted to ask what they meant, but before he could speak, another presence entered the chamber. Princess Alindrish looked different than she had at the reception, smaller somehow, more vulnerable, dressed in simple traveling clothes instead of royal finery, but her violet eyes still held that same intensity that had frozen her in place weeks ago. I asked them to arrange this meeting, she said, and her voice was softer than Marcus had expected. I needed to see you again, and I needed to explain. Marcus stared at her, unsure whether to be afraid or angry or grateful. You ruined my life, he said. and the words came out harsher than he intended. Everyone thinks I did something terrible to you. There have been assassination attempts. My career is destroyed. I know, Alendra said, and genuine pain crossed her silver-blue features. And I'm sorry. I never meant for any of that to happen. My reaction was beyond my control. She stepped closer, and Marcus noticed that her hands were trembling. Do you know what soulsight is? She asked. Marcus shook his head. It is a gift passed down through the Velith royal bloodline for 100,000 years. Alendra explained. It allows us to perceive the spiritual resonance of sentient beings, their essence, their nature, the accumulated weight of their existence. She paused. Gathering herself, every species has a resonance, a color, a pattern, a song. The archivists appear as ancient silver light. The Karathi burn with steady orange fire. Even the most complex species I have ever encountered showed me patterns I could understand and comprehend. Her violet eyes locked onto his, and then I looked at you. Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. What did you see? Alendra closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, Marcus could see something like wonder mixed with fear. When I look at most beings, I see one resonance, one pattern evolved over millions of years of stable development, peaceful and predictable and calm. She shook her head slowly. When I looked at you, I saw thousands. Marcus did not understand. Thousands of what? Thousands of patterns, Alendra said. Thousands of songs layered on top of each other, woven together, fighting and harmonizing at the same time. It was like looking at a supernova. Marcus, beautiful and terrifying and completely overwhelming. One of the archivists glided forward. Perhaps we can explain what the princess perceived. It said, your species is unique in all the galaxy. Marcus Cole Earth is the only known world where intelligent life evolved despite conditions that should have made such evolution impossible. The chamber filled with holographic images, scenes of ancient Earth, of ice ages and asteroid impacts and volcanic devastation. 5 major extinction events, the archivist continued. Countless smaller disasters again and again. Life on your world was pushed to the edge of complete annihilation and again and again. It survived and adapted and grew stronger. The images shifted, showing the evolution of humanity through millions of years of struggle. Other species evolved in stability. They had time to develop gradually, to smooth out their rough edges, to become singular and focused. But humans are different, Alendra said, taking over the explanation. Every extinction event, every disaster, every near-death experience of your entire planet, it left a mark on your species. You did not just survive. Those catastrophes, you absorbed them. They became part of you. She stepped even closer. And now Marcus could see tears forming in her violet eyes. When I looked at your soul, Marcus, I saw the ghosts of everything that ever tried to kill your species. I saw the ice ages and the meteors and the plagues and the predators. I saw 1,000 different evolutionary paths that were destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed. Again, I saw violence and gentleness and creativity and destruction all existing in the same space. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Your soul is not one thing. It is a chorus of everything that came before, fractured and chaotic and beautiful, beyond anything I have ever witnessed. Marcus struggled to process what she was telling him. Is that why you were afraid? Alendra shook her head. I was not afraid of you. I was overwhelmed. Looking at you was like staring directly into a star. Too much light, too much information, too much everything. No being I have ever encountered has that kind of presence. The archivist spoke again. The prophecy of the Voidwalkers speaks of beings forged in death who would carry the fire of 1,000 extinct worlds within them, beings who would emerge from a dead world and reshape the galaxy. Marcus finally understood. You think humans are the Voidwalkers. We do not think. Alindra said. "We know. I have seen it with my own eyes. What you are, what all humans are, is exactly what the prophecy described." She reached out and took his hand, and Marcus felt a strange warmth spread through him at her touch. "Your species does not just survive extinction," she said. "You become stronger because of it. You adapt in ways that should be impossible. You carry the fire of everyone who came before you, everyone who fought and died so that you could exist." Marcus looked down at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time all. His life he had felt ordinary, just another human, being on a small planet at the edge of nowhere. But now he was learning that the very ordinariness he had always felt was actually something extraordinary, that every human being carried within them the accumulated strength of billions of years of survival against impossible odds. "What happens now?" he asked, and Alindra's expression grew serious. "Now the galaxy will have to decide what to do about you. Some will see humans as saviors, others will see you as threats that must be destroyed. The balance of power that has existed for 1,000,000 years is about to change." She squeezed his hand. "And I have decided to help you, not because I pity you or because I feel guilty about what happened, but because I have seen what humans truly are, and I believe that the galaxy needs you more than it knows." Marcus looked at the princes, then at the ancient archivists, then back at his own hands. The weight of what he had learned settled onto his shoulders like a physical force. He was not just Marcus Cole anymore. He was a representative of something much larger, a species that had been forged in fire and death and refused to stay down no matter how many times the universe tried to destroy them and whatever came next. He knew that nothing would ever be the same. The weeks that followed were the worst of Marcus Cole's life. Word spread through the diplomatic channels faster than any ship could travel, and soon everyone in the galaxy seemed to know about the human who had somehow offended Princess Alindra of the Velith Imperium. His career was over, that much was obvious. Ambassador Chun stopped inviting him to meetings, and his colleagues avoided him as if his bad luck might be contagious. And the other alien species treated Earth's delegation with even more contempt than before. "You have damaged our standing in the Concord," a senior diplomat told him bluntly. "And we do not even know what you did or how you did it." Marcus wanted to defend himself, but what could he say? He had done nothing except exist in the same room as the princess. And somehow that had been enough to cause an incident that threatened humanity's fragile position among the stars. He spent his days in his small quarters aboard Earth's diplomatic vessel, reading and rereading the reports about what had happened, searching for some clue that might explain the unexplainable. There was nothing. Official Velith statement said only that the princess had experienced a moment of discomfort, and that the matter was considered closed, but not forgotten. Marcus learned this the hard way when strange things began happening around him. The first incident occurred at a refueling station. 3 weeks after the reception, Marcus was walking through a crowded corridor when he noticed a Velith male watching him from across the passage, not with hostility, but with intense focus, as if Marcus were a puzzle that needed solving. The Velith was dressed in plain clothes, but something about his posture and the way he moved suggested military training. And when Marcus tried to approach him, the alien pulled out a small device and pointed it at Marcus. There was a soft hum and a flash of blue light. And then the Velith looked at the device's screen. The color drained from his face. He staggered backward as if he had been struck, and his hands were shaking so badly that he nearly dropped the device. And then he turned and fled into the crowd. Without saying a single word, Marcus stood there in confusion, his heart pounding, wondering what the alien had seen. The second incident was more frightening. Someone tried to kill him. The attack came without warning. A small explosive device hidden in a package that was delivered to his quarters. Set to detonate the moment he opened it, only luck saved him. He had been called away to answer a communication at the exact moment he would have opened the package. And the bomb went off in an empty room. No, one could identify who had sent it. No, one could explain why someone wanted a low-ranking human attached. Dead, but Marcus was beginning to understand that whatever had happened at the reception was far more significant than anyone had admitted. He found an ally in Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's chief xenanthropologist, a brilliant woman who had spent her entire career studying alien cultures and who was one of us, the few people willing to talk to Marcus without treating him like a disease. Something is very wrong here, she told him during a secret meeting in her laboratory. And I think it has nothing to do with you personally and everything to do with what you represent. What do I represent? Marcus asked, and the frustration in his voice was obvious. I am nobody, just a junior attached from a planet that most species cannot even find on a map. Dr. Tanaka shook her head and pulled up a holographic display filled with ancient texts and religious symbols. I have been researching the Volith Imperium, she said, specifically their religious traditions. And I found something interesting, something that is supposed to be so secret that even mentioning it to outsiders is punishable by death. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What is it? A prophecy, Dr. Tanaka said, and her voice dropped to a whisper. An ancient prophecy about beings called the Voidwalkers. She manipulated the display, and symbols that Marcus could not read filled the air around them. According to the fragments I have been able to find, the prophecy speaks of beings from a dead world, a world that should have been lifeless, but somehow produced intelligent life anyway. Beings who would one day return and reshape the entire galaxy. Marcus frowned. A dead world? What does that mean? Dr. Tanaka looked at him with an expression that made his stomach drop. Earth. Marcus, it means Earth. She pulled up another display, this one showing data about planetary classification systems used by the Galactic Concord. By galactic standards, our planet should be dead. We have had 5 major extinction events, countless smaller disasters, ice ages and asteroid impacts and supervolcanic eruptions, any one of which should have ended intelligent life permanently. But it did not, Marcus said slowly. Exactly, life on Earth kept dying and kept coming back, over and over again, in ways that other species consider impossible to the rest of the galaxy. Earth is an anomaly, a world that refuses to follow the rules. Marcus stared at the data, his mind racing. So when the princess looked at me, she may have seen something that confirmed the prophecy. Dr. Tanaka finished. Something that told her that humans are the Voidwalkers her religion has been waiting for. The implications were staggering. If the Velith believed that humans were the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, it would explain everything: the princess's reaction, the strange scan at the station, the assassination attempt. Some would see humans as saviors, others would see them as threats that needed to be eliminated before they could fulfill whatever destiny the prophecy described. Marcus was still processing this information when his voice communication device chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as unknown, but the encryption was unlike anything he had ever seen. He opened it with trembling fingers. The message contained only a few words, but they changed everything. She saw your soul, human, and it terrified her. The archivists request an audience. Come, alone to the coordinates attached. Your questions will be answered. Marcus looked at Dr. Tanaka, and she looked back at him with fear and excitement in her eyes. The archivists, she breathed. They are the oldest species in the galaxy, historians who have recorded everything that has ever happened since the first civilizations arose. Should I go? Marcus asked. Dr. Tanaka was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke her voice was barely audible. I think you have. Because whatever is happening here is bigger than you, or me, or even Earth itself, and if anyone knows the truth about what that princess saw when she looked at you, it would be them. Marcus saved the coordinates and deleted the message. He did not know what he would find when he followed those coordinates, and he did not know if he would survive the journey. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was no longer invisible, and whatever came next would change not just his life, but the fate of his entire species. Marcus Cole had never felt so small in his entire life. The diplomatic station called Varanthos Prime stretched out before him like a city made of light and crystal. And everywhere he looked, there were aliens beings so strange and beautiful that his mind struggled to accept what his eyes were seeing. He was just a low-ranking attach, a nobody from Earth who had been lucky enough to join humanity's first major diplomatic mission to the Galactic Concord. Lucky. That was what everyone kept telling him. But standing here in this grand reception hall, surrounded by creatures who had been traveling between stars while humans were still living in caves, Marcus did not feel lucky at all. He felt invisible. The reception celebrated the founding of the Concord, a gathering of the most powerful species in the known galaxy. And humanity had only recently been allowed to join. Although not welcomed, there was a difference. And Marcus felt that difference every time an alien glanced at him and then looked away as if he were nothing more than furniture. Try to enjoy yourself, Ambassador Chun had told him before disappearing into a crowd of important diplomats, leaving Marcus alone with a glass of something that tasted like honey mixed with electricity. So Marcus walked past towering beings with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with inner fire, walked past delicate creatures that seemed to be made entirely of living glass, their bodies chiming softly with every movement. He walked past a group of insectoid diplomats who clicked and buzzed in a language that sounded like music played backward. None of them paid him any attention to them. Humans were a curiosity, at best a young species from a small planet at the edge of nowhere. Barely worth acknowledging, Marcus found himself standing near a massive window that looked out into space, and he stared at the stars and wondered why he had ever thought this would be exciting. That was when he saw her. She entered the reception hall through a doorway that seemed to have been designed specifically for her arrival. And the moment she appeared, the entire room shifted. Conversations paused, heads turned. Even the ancient beings who had seen civilizations rise and fall seemed to straighten with respect. Princess Alindra of the Veloth Imperium. Marcus had read about her in the briefing files, the daughter of the most powerful emperor in the galaxy, heir to 1,000 worlds, a being of such importance that entire wars had been fought just to earn an audience with her family. But the files had not prepared him for the reality. Her skin was silver blue, shimmering like moonlight on water, and her eyes were the deepest violet Marcus had ever seen, eyes that seemed to hold secrets older than humanity itself. She moved with a grace that made everyone else in the room look clumsy by comparison, and her gown seemed to be woven from starlight itself. Trailing behind her like a comet's tail, she was surrounded by guards and advisors and servants, all of them watching her with obvious devotion. And Marcus understood immediately that this was someone who had never known a moment of insignificance in her entire life. She was everything. He was should have looked away. He should have gone back to his drink and his loneliness and his invisibility, but something made him keep watching, and as if she could feel his gaze, Princess Alindra turned her head and looked directly at him. Their eyes met across the crowded chamber, and Princess Alindra stopped cold. It was not a subtle pause or a brief hesitation. She stopped completely, as if she had walked into an invisible wall, and the wine glass in her hand slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound of breaking glass cut through the ambient noise like a scream Everyone stared. Her guards moved instantly, surrounding her, their hands reaching for weapons that Marcus could not see, but knew must be deadly beyond imagination. Her advisors rushed forward with expressions of alarm, speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like singing, but Princess Alindra did not look at any of them. She was still staring at Marcus, and the expression on her face was something he could not understand. Was it fear or shock or recognition or something else entirely that he had no name for? Her violet eyes were wide, her silver blue lips parted, and for one impossible moment, Marcus thought she might actually speak to him, but then her guards blocked his view, forming a wall of armor and muscle between the princess and the rest of the room. And Marcus heard urgent voices giving commands. Move her to safety. What happened? What did she see? Get her out of here now. Within seconds, Princess Alindra was gone, whisked away through a side entrance as if she had never been there at all. And the reception hall erupted into chaos. Aliens who had been ignoring Marcus moments ago were now staring at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility. Heard whispers in a dozen different languages, and even though he could not understand the words, he could guess their meaning. What did the human do? What did he do to the princess? Ambassador Chun appeared at his side, her face pale and her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Marcus, what happened? What did you do? Nothing. Marcus protested, and his confusion was genuine because he truly had no idea what had just occurred. I was just standing here and she looked at me, and then I do not know what happened. But no one seemed to believe him. Within minutes, a Velith official approached the human delegation with a message delivered in cold and formal tones. The humans were being asked to leave the reception, not ordered asked, but it was the kind of asking that allowed no refusal as Marcus was escorted out of the grand hall. He looked back one last time at the spot where Princess Alindra had stood, where servants were now cleaning up the broken glass and trying to pretend that nothing unusual had happened, but something had happened, something important, something that Marcus did not understand at all. He had done nothing wrong. He was certain of that, but somehow, in the space of a single glance, everything had changed. The way the aliens looked at him now was different. Before, they had looked through him as if he did not exist. Now, they looked at him as if he was dangerous, and Princess Alindra, most powerful princess in the entire galaxy, had looked at him as if she had seen a ghost, or perhaps something worse than a ghost, as the human delegation shuttle carried Marcus away from Varanthos Prime. He pressed his hand against the cold window and stared out at the stars. What did she see when she looked at me? He wondered what could possibly make someone like her react that way to someone like me. He did not know the answer, but he had a feeling of the end. Cold and certain feeling deep in his gut that his life would never be the same again, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a question repeated itself over and over like a song he could not forget. What am I?